Okay, so another thing, and we're going to mapping now because that's where you wanted to go anyway.
Yes.
So if we make a map, and I'll just make my own map of this area here and with the data that we have. So these things, and I've got a few buildings here that are really big because we set the threshold at 50,000 square meters. So okay, layout manager. I'll make an empty layout. If you make more maps, you can make your own templates as well. So you can save your map as a template. For example, I've got one here that I use for some purposes, but in this case, I make it empty layout. I have to give this one a name, and this name does only come out in my project. So no worries about having the exact right name. Just make sure that if you have in your project, if you will have 10 maps, that you can recognize which is on which map. So you can always give this a functional name like large houses and height model. Something like that, larger houses and height model. Okay. So this will be my map. Now this is the first place. Now you have to decide before you add anything to the map, you have to decide, okay, what should the paper size be? By default, this is A4 landscape. How do I know? Well, right click and go to the page properties. That is the only time that you go to the page properties is when you start your map. Otherwise, because you have to think ahead anyway. So this is A4 landscape. You can change this to anything you like. There's of course, there's the different settings. So you could also make an A1 or whatever. But you could also say, okay, this will be a small image in a report. And my report will be printed on A4. So my image should be smaller than A4. And you can add here, for example, you can make a 17 by 17 centimeter map out of this. So this will fit nicely with 2 centimeters on each side in your report. You could do that. But in this case, I'll just leave this to A4 for a bit. Oh, you see, by the way, there's all kinds of...
The only thing you have to be aware of that in Europe we use A4, but in other countries you might have letter.
Letter
it's
format.
not on letter.
Yeah.
Letter format, which is really annoying for us, especially if you want to print things out.
Yeah, as long as you're in the Netherlands, use A4 or whatever. Or
use A4.
Yeah.
And what you also see today is if you only want to use it for presentations, digital presentations, people also use the screen settings. So you have 4K or you have HD, depending on. But yeah, okay, you're already there. 9020, 1080, full HD, or okay.
Yep. Yeah.
So that's another setting you can do, so you can prepare your image for a report as well for a digital report.
Yeah. Well, 4K is so 2017. Nobody uses 4K anymore, I guess.
No, it's just an example. No worries.
Yeah, my laptop has a 4K screen, and I kind of think, why did I choose that? Okay, so it's A4 landscape now at this moment, and then you have to add things to your map. The things that you can add to your map start here. Add a 3D map or a picture or a text or a legend or whatever. It's all here. So I'll just go for map, and I draw my my map thing here, and I've got this map. So it's rendering now, and you see everything that's on my QGIS project here is now also on my map. Okay, now I want to change this because this is not, I want to see that bend in the river and see how it works on both sides. So I like to have a different look at the data. So I try to pan, and okay, this happens. This is, luckily here's Control Z works. It hardly works anywhere in QGIS, but here it works. And I'm very happy with that. So next thing is that, okay, how do I zoom and pan? Well, here you have, this is your default tool, and it is move item. Here, select or move item. The one underneath that is move item content. So there you have it, move item content. Now I can have a look at that bend in the river and see. And also if I use my scroll wheel now, it actually scrolls the way I like. Now, if my steps for the scroll wheel are too big, I can go to the settings and change that. But in this case, I'm fine with that. And I have to set the scale manually anyway, because I want my map to be on an exact scale. So I put this in 25,000. Right, there we are. And for aesthetical purposes, I don't want these two to run out of my, I want to see them. Yeah, so there we are. They should be colliding within the map frame. Okay, so this is my map and I'm really happy with it. So I'm adding a title and everything, but here's the title. Everything I do here, I need to change in the item properties tab. I did this for the map. Here's the item properties tab again. And if I want to change something for the title, you also see that here on the item properties. So here I have to change the title of the map. So this is a heights and large buildings map. Each. Let's do that. Slightly more correct. Heights and large buildings. So it says heights and large buildings. If I want to change my font, I have to change it here in the item properties. The item properties tab is really important. Here I can pick the font that I'm happy with. I normally use corporate office a lot. Regular, I don't know, 18. Yeah, could be working right. No, slightly too big, whatever. Things happen. So make it, okay, I'll make it slightly smaller now. Should fit here. Heights and large buildings. Nice, got a title to the map. Now the thing that goes wrong most of the time is the legend. It goes wrong in the sense that the legend has a will of its own. It will just come up with all kinds of things that you don't want. It will be too big, and if I try to scale it, you know, I can make it bigger, but I can't make it smaller. I can make it higher, but I can't make it lower. Kind of different thing. So we'll have to have a look at this. So what do I want to see? For example, these legend items that I have here. Interesting, but yeah, it's a bit big, isn't it? And I only see the blue ones, so let's see, only show items inside linked map. Will that help? Oh yeah, that helps. It's all, and they're all ingetrokken. Yeah, bad luck. So these are the two background maps I'm looking at. Can I remove them? Here's a minus button that should remove the selected item, but it doesn't work. That's because it's auto-updated. So I can change that, and I can then, I don't want to see these two in my legend because they're not the actual content of the map. So this is better. Okay. It's kind of a bit of a boring legend, isn't it? Yeah. There's also the title of the legend, verblijfsobject. It says verblijfsobject here. Can I change this? Yes, I can. I could just put here in large blue buildings. Now it says large blue buildings here. Can I change the font? Yes, I can. I have to look at what this is exactly, and then I can see it's a subgroup. Interesting. So fonts and text formatting for the subgroup, and here I can make something a bit. I can make it a bit bigger, perhaps. Does that work? Yeah, works. Okay. So everything you change in your map, you change in your item properties. Make sure that everything that is on your final map is actually useful. So it should have a minimum, let's say minimal viable content, but it also should have a maximum content. So if I see this, yep, might be interesting. I don't know. Maybe I should change this one to no longer there, something. So tell the story of the data, tell the story that you want to tell. There is a few very large buildings that are no longer there. That is the story I'm telling you here. Oh, and by the way, they're all in a certain area, as you can see, west of this of the A2 main motorway, or most of them are. And there's another story here that is about the height of this area. And you can see that these bridges are really high. They're much higher than the surrounding area. I don't know why I want to tell this story, but that is the story I'm telling with this map.
Well,
And
it's
if you,
related to the studio work. I think we saw a lot of analysis for this area, a lot of maps, sequences of maps. But what is interesting here is that there are small, very old villages on both sides of the river, and they are hardly recognized anymore. I mean, this Nieuwegein has taken over everything, but there was a beautiful Vreeswijk there, that harbor there. It's really taken over by Nieuwegein. It's surrounded by Nieuwegein.
It's all those bloody architects that have been working there and started building ugly buildings.
Exactly. And there are other interesting stories here about the waterway. So the flow of water, if you go through time, and it will be of interest to see how that influenced the development of this area, especially the situation now, where there are lots of barriers. First, there was only the water barrier. Then the water barriers were extended with the canals. And then the highways came in the 70s or 80s. I mean, amazing. And then you see that the growth switches from one place to another place. So the ancient places are not the places of growth, that are other places. So there's something interesting to tell here. And
but then again, you want to have the years of construction for the buildings, and you want to show that. For example, if you know that the motorways were built in let's say 1980, then I would take 1980 as a threshold value for my buildings as well, to see when did they make the jump to the other side of the motorway. For example, I can imagine that this area is built on a lot later after this one came, because first this was the outskirts of town. It was on the outside, and then only 10 years later or so, probably they started building there.
So that's about mapping the sequentials based on the data sets and overlaying the maps. And I think that's something important to deal with. And we have seen beautiful examples of that, of the ancient VMS maps, the ancient scans, together with the landscape overlay, the AHN, but also with current maps like OpenStreetMap with the streets on it, etc., and doing some analysis there. So that's also a way to do analysis here, I would say. There are a couple of questions about this, I see from Marika a question. If you have a VMS layer with legends, how can you scale those legends? I see some issues with the Rudifun. Well, I couldn't access the services myself as well. And there is a question about, well, we are using a lot of Dutch services with Dutch names. How can that easily be translated? So how can this, because we have half of our students are international.
If you want to translate it to another area, or if you want to translate the Dutch terms to English.
Yes, that's the point, I think, because we have 50% of our population now are international students. So for them, it's very difficult to understand what is verblijfsobject and all the names of the categories, the columns, the labels of the fields. So is there a way to transform, translate, convert these data sets, maybe with a script or a template, to something which is more useful for them?
Well, there's a few things here that you could do. One of the things is that, for example, in our base registrations, we use Inspire, the Inspire guidelines. And Inspire is the European collaboration in order to make sure that we do the same things in all the different member states. And you know that there is a catalog service or that in the different languages translates everything to everything. But it is pretty hard to get by. And there's no as far as I know, at least, there's no automatic translation of these terms to English or to any other European language. An example is that I know we have this building data in our base registration, and I know that the Bach is a part of the Inspire guideline. So everything we collect in the Inspire in the building registration is Inspire proof. And at some point in time, I was asked to make a map of Barcelona from a 3D printed map. And I asked, at what level of detail do you want it? Well, we want to see the different buildings. Can you do that? And okay, my train of thought is like, okay, I know we have that in the Netherlands. I know it is Inspire. I know Spain is in Europe as well. So it's also Inspire. So yeah, I should be able to find the data. The next thing is that I don't speak Spanish, but I have to look into this Spanish service. So, and then the next thing, by the way, is that it isn't in the Spanish registration, it's in the Catalonian registration, of course, because Spain is not one country, I found out. So the language barriers are always there. What you could do is, if you are from one of the European countries, is try to find your own data server in your own language and see if you can translate it there from one to the other. Because you have something similar there as well. Maybe that will help. And if you see, for example, in the in this data set, you see all the different fields that are here, all the different values. You could make your mapping for these fields to the things that you have in your country. Now, if you're from outside Europe, you're just basically, yeah, well, you know, you have a more difficult task.
Okay, but in principle, the student group could make a list with these field names,
yeah, we can do that.
Translate it into English, and we can change the names in this table. I mean,
yeah.
We can say in onderzoek, in research, or how you want to call it, under research, under something, you know, so you can change the labels. And if you have this translation table, you can do that for yourself.
Yeah, changing the labels is pretty difficult, I guess. And it will work in a certain project unless you transform the data itself.
True. It's only your own file, your local files, where you can do that.
Yeah, you can.
If you download.
If you downloaded the data, you can always, of course, try to change the labels, etc. But sharing that is pretty hard. Yeah.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Yeah. Luis says he is using the PDoc viewer online. And indeed, in Chrome, in Google Chrome browser, you can have the Dutch, you can have the translation function, and then everything is translated to another language.
Yeah, we could do that.
Could be useful.
Yeah.
And then you can use that, but you have to be critical there, because these are technical terms. So Google is not always correct in translating it, but if you're using it the same way everywhere, it could be a way of using it.
Yeah.
And indeed, if you're working on the Randstad or let's say it Westland, you can change the names of your categories or labels in the data set, the local data set you have. But yeah,
could do that.
You can adapt the tables. So because it's not available in English, like the Spanish, the Barcelona data is only available in Catalonian language.
Yeah.
So I assume what's Dutch for us, what Spanish is for us is Dutch for a couple of students.
Yes, of course. And so I apologize there that in the Netherlands, our formal data structure is 100% in Dutch.
Yeah, but in Germany, it's in German anyway. I mean,
it's in
in
every
every
country, it's the same
country
thing.
has
Yeah,
its own language. France, everything is in French.
French. Yeah, yeah,
That's a thing. So Google Translate indeed,
yeah,
make a table, etc. But you
yeah.
have to work on it yourself. We cannot solve that for you.
No,
You can do that together as student team. If there are Dutch students and international students working together,
yeah,
you have to find a way there and to make it easier for all of you.
yeah.
Yeah.
So, and that is because in the PDOK plugin and in PDOK there's only Dutch data. There's also, of course, there's other plugins. I'm not sure if I showed you the quick map services in the video, but
Not
this
yet, but
not yet. Okay, so if you
well, in the video,
yeah, I'm not sure, but if you find the quick map services plugin by
it's a
just starting,
beautiful thing.
yeah, it's lovely, and it will give you a lot of data sets from all kind of different sources. But this is just international data, and it's all background maps or complete maps. It is no data collection; it is a map collection. And if you want to, for example, pick up the OpenStreetMap, there's open plugins for OpenStreetMap as well, so you can take all the stuff from OpenStreetMap in your map.
We're gonna make a separate movie about this kind of things, how to grab data from
OpenStreetMap,
there.
yeah, oh, yep, OSM.
Grabbing data, OSM, yeah, the OSM interface, because that's a beautiful thing as well.
Yeah.
Quick OSM.
Quick OSM, yeah. Then you
Quick
can
OSM.
download
Okay.
specific parts of OpenStreetMap, not only the whole thing, but
yeah.
Just, another thing that might be useful, by the way, for you is talking about these, is that we also have, there's the spatial plans here for the Netherlands. This is also a plugin that you can use, but there's also the WFS and WMS services for the spatial plans as well, and that might be useful for you as well. I'll just show it to you, and we'll see later how it works. Let's see, where's the...
And there's a question from Marika on this, on the WMS layers and the legends. Will you show in the later stage as well how to scale it or how to use these legends?
Yeah, they're terrible. Don't use them. No, I'm sorry. It will give you a complete image of the legend image, but the image is just the image. So yeah, it's terrible. Sorry.
Yeah, it's better to use feature services so you can really make your own legends and your own maps.
Yeah.
And make selections. I think that's also an important thing. You can make selections, then you can wipe out the data you don't need, which is not accurate, and you can really focus on the data, the part of the data which is important for your story.
Yeah. I'll zoom in a bit more. Oh, this is one thing that with performance issues with WFS services, and that was one question that we had earlier. If you are zoomed out too much, it will try to download your data all the time. So as soon as you do a high density data set, for example, in this case, I'm going to look at spatial plans, just zoom in first and then check your service and then zoom out. But don't try to download the whole set for the whole of the Netherlands immediately at one time. So zoom in, then add your layer. For in this case, I use the WFS services for spatial planning in the Netherlands. I'll use the zoning areas here. I'll add that. It will give you all the zoning areas. And now I can filter this. For example, I only want to see the zoning areas. I could just look up the filter again. Yep, come on, bring it on. And I can have a look at the filter. Source. These are the typical, of course, in Dutch again, the statuses. So here we have the, for example, the main zoning thing. And I could just have a look at, well, show me what you have. And this will bring up all the values that are possible within this value field. So for example, if I want to do just the wonen, building, living, so I look for zoning areas equals living, I will just have the zoned areas here for living areas. So if you find a house, not a building, but a house without outside of these zones, that might be an interesting thing. Now you see this performs pretty well now because I've filtered it. So I'm only asking the service to give me the zoning areas for buildings, for living in, and it's not too much data. But if I would zoom out to the whole of the Netherlands, the performance would degrade immensely. So always be careful for how much data you're asking for. Oh, so, by the way, you're not allowed to live in the city center here in the Binnenstad of Delft. That is not true, but because we also have, of course, mixed zoning. So you have to.
This is a mixed area. Okay.
Yeah, you have to be very careful with drawing conclusions too quickly. I'm sorry about that.
Yeah, so that's a good one. So to conclude on this, switching on and off layers when zooming is a very important thing to reduce the issues with data transfer, data downloading with online services. Start with a very low level and then zoom out instead of zooming in from the whole Netherlands. And make sure to have filters in the background, but be aware that if you're using filters, some things might not pop up because they're in a wrong category or something. So be careful. So it's good to use filters to reduce the amount of data. On the other hand, you might forget that you have introduced the filter, that you have set a filter, and you are only looking at filtered data without being aware of that. Yeah. Okay. Good.
So, going back to the layout manager, just one quick question. I had this layout, the larger houses and height model. If I open this one now, what will it show? Will it still show larger houses and height model? Curious. Let's have a look. Looks like it. No, it doesn't. That was fast. So it had in memory the old map, but as soon as I reloaded it, it reloaded the project as well. And the project now includes in this area a background map and these ones. So yeah, kind of not very intuitively, but it changes the map. Now, some of you have made more maps from the same area, and you had a question about how can I make more different maps? What you can do, if you look at these, you see the map themes here, is what you can do is you can lock the different layers that you have. So here you have the lock layers. And that means that, and you could also lock the styles, but locking layers is most important. That means that if I switch off this one, for example, and I refresh, nothing will happen. If I switch the background layer, the height model on again, I refresh, nothing will happen. However, once I unlock the layers and I refresh, doof, here it comes. So by locking layers, you can freeze your map and then start working on QGIS, make a new map, and that way you can play around with it. But you have to be very structured if you make multiple maps in what is in what map exactly. One more thing about the legend. I'll add just another legend because I wasn't thinking of that. Here you see that in this case, I've got this low density, mid and high density. And that is the exact terms, these, that I have in my project here. I also see here that this layer name is here PV28 Bruto Gem, which is not a nice name. So I can also rename this layer here in my project. I'll name it anything. The FSI,
anything.
FSI anything. If I go back to my map now and I refresh, this will have FSI anything in the legend now as well. So that means you have a live link to the data, as long as you have the auto update on. But you have a live link to the data. And that means that if you do things well in your project, they come out well in your map as well. And you don't have to add or edit anything here, because things done well on a low level will also come out in the map.
Erik, what's also important next to locking layers, to have specific layers in your drawing, is fixing the extent of your map. Because you can make bookmarks, so you always have the same area which you can export to a PDF, but also here you might make a mistake. You might move your mouse on top of the on top of this map, or you might move the scroll wheel and you have zoomed differently, and then you're making a sequence of drawings, and then at a certain time they have changed in scale, or they have shifted a bit.
Yeah, terrible.
And that's really trouble. So making good maps, that means that the extent should be fixed, so you cannot by accident change that. Can you explain that?
Yeah, I always have a bit of trouble with this because you can, what I normally do is, let's see if there's another option, but what I normally do if I want a fixed situation is that I make a bookmark of this area. Then I make the map, or the other way around, and you can always zap between those two. Let's see. Oh, damn! You asked me something that I didn't prepare yet.
Sorry.
Is it overviews? No, it's not overviews. It's not grids. I'm always.
You can lock. You have the extent there, when you have probably you can relate it to a bookmark, a spatial bookmark.
Yeah, you can.
Or you can relate it to an object. So normally what you do, you can relate it to, let's say, the birds, the neighborhood sizes, or you can use the extent of the neighborhood size. You can extend the use of a province, or you can make a square. You place a square on the map, and that's the square you're going to use every time.
Yeah. And I'm
okay.
It's always, oh, wait. Here's this button. Oh, look at this. I was looking for these. Just button. Sometimes you really have fun. Okay, so here you see set map extent to main to match the main canvas extent.
Yeah, and there's another one next to it.
Yeah, and that's the other way around. View the current map extent in the main canvas. So I'm looking at this point now. So if I do this, then my project will have zoomed to that area again.
Yeah. Okay.
And here you can play around with these two. And here's the bookmarks as well. So you see, I've said a few earlier.
Exactly.
I don't know. Nederland?
I think
Nederland.
Usually bookmarks is the best way to work with. And store those in your project. So when I start a document, I always make sure that first of all I have a background image, OSM street map, or in the Netherlands another one.
Yeah.
I set the right CRS, and I make bookmarks of the areas where I'm working in to make sure that if I export data or I make maps like this, then I always have the same extent. Yeah.
Yep. That's cool. Yeah, and this is the toolbar I was looking for. That just
it changed between the older versions did have it in a different manner, so I was looking for it as well.
It was somewhere here,
exactly. It was true. I agree with that. So it's there, but it's.
So we have bookmarks here as well. You can use these bookmarks, but you have to make the bookmarks in your QGIS project, by the way.
Yes. Command B, command bookmark, and then you can make it. And then what works as well is if you have, in this case, the bookmark, that's the extent you define by yourself, but you can also use prepared extents. Like I said, if you have the municipality of Rotterdam, every neighborhood you can automatically use to generate an atlas on with the extents of that neighborhood. Yeah, so there are ways to do that, but that's a different thing we have to explain another time.
Yeah, atlases are really, really useful, really nice. I'm not sure if they fit in the program for next quarter, but
No,
this
it's
is
the
definitely
third
something.
quarter.
Yeah, sorry?
The third quarter.
Third quarter. So I'm definitely going to do something about atlases, but yeah, not for now, not today.
No.